Moving on now, it has now been 20 years since Recep Tayyip Erdogan rose to power in Turkey. Either way you look at it, he has undeniably transformed the country. For his supporters, he has turned Turkey into a regional powerhouse and rolled back secularism that's often associated with the West. But for critics, he's set Turkey on a more Islamist, even authoritarian path and failed to manage a now years-long economic crisis. Now, adding to his troubles with elections just 6 weeks away, February's massive earthquake, many blaming his government for the scale of the devastation. For more, Claude Guibal joins me for Perspective. She's a journalist specialized in the Middle East, and she's also the reporter behind a 7-part French radio podcast on the Turkish president. Claude Guibal, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning.
So contrary to, I think, what many would expect, Erdogan's religious conservatism and his skepticism of democracy, I think, date back essentially to his childhood. Can you tell us about his rise and what shaped his politics?
You know, actually, Recep Tayyip Erdogan was born in a very, very popular neighborhood in Istanbul.
Popular working class.
Popular working class and very conservative working class. Usually when we think about Turkey, we always have, this Western look to Turkey. We think about Istanbul as a very cosmopolitan city and this extraordinary mix between, two borders of two continents, one very westernized, one more Middle Eastern country. And Erdogan doesn't fit in this global picture. He's coming from, deep Turkey, conservative, working class, very religious. He went to school an imam school, a religious school, in a Turkey which was shaped at this time by Atatürk's legacy, very secular Turkey, where schools were not religious and where it was very, it was not well seen to be educated in a religious school. And also, Erdogan comes, he has a very strong feeling of revenge towards this Turkey elite, which was ruling the country for years and years, despising people like him. So when he came to power, he was the one who, he was kind of embodied the real Turks versus those who are looking like Westerners, but they're not the real Turks. When he was a kid, he used to like poems. A very famous poem who said, "You're a foreigner in your own country." That's a sentence that defines very well his feeling.
Incredible. It's definitely a recurring theme for leaders like Erdogan.
Yeah.
What do you think have been the biggest defining features of his leadership then?
I asked people during this podcast, I asked people 3 words to define him. And there was 2 words coming every time: pragmatic and a chameleon. Is a chameleon, is fitting to what the situation needs or what he thinks the situation needs. So when he came to power 20 years ago, it's hard to remember the guy he was, because we are now thinking about Erdogan being like almost a dictator, at least authoritarian, this is for sure. But 20 years ago, he was carrying the hopes of democracy. He was the one who took the flag of the European Union candidacy with democratic, very strong marks. But as he said, democracy is like a tramway. You get off whenever you want, So the ends justify, the needs justify, what you need to do. So if tomorrow the way to stay in power is to say that Islam is not good, he might be able to say it, because if it fits his ambitions, he will do that. And the only ambition of Recep Tayyip Erdogan now is to stay in power. That's the only thing he wants.
That brings me to the next question. In your podcast, people describe him as an almost dictator. I think those are the words that you just used yourself. How do you see his model of governance as compared to places like Russia or China, which people describe as full-blown dictatorships?
Well, actually, Turkey is a very complex country with democratic rules. And at the beginning of his career, Erdogan played by the rules. Like he ran for elections. Sometimes he lost elections. But he ran for elections, and he knows that it is still important. But in 2016, when there was this coup where he almost lost everything in a night, from that moment, it started a little bit before, but from that moment, it became like, how would I say
No
in
more
English?
dissent was tolerated.
Yeah, well, now the ambition is to stay in power, whatever happens, and democracy is not it's not a tool anymore. So it changed the constitution the following year. And now it's no more a parliamentarian regime as it used to be, but it's a presidential regime. There's no more prime minister. So Erdogan decides everything. He is ruling with decrets, there's no more laws. He's choosing himself who's going to be the head of university, he's the one who chooses everything. So now we are in a presidential regime where everything is going through him, and so that's why the future is very dark for the Turks, because if it stays like that, what Turkey is going to be like in 5 years' time, and if it's not, what it's going to be as well, because Turkey has to be rebuilt, even its institutions, its political institutions.
Speaking of what Turkey is going to be, like I said, Erdogan has now been in power for about 20 years. That's longer than Ataturk, the founder of the modern Turkish Republic, was in power. Do you think that Erdogan has shaped Turkey more than Ataturk? Do you think that he's erased his legacy?
Well, it's very interesting because, Ataturk means the father of the Turks. And if you are going to Turkey, you can see it because you have these giant portraits everywhere. There is a cult of Ataturk. And Erdogan was born, in this kind of hatred of Ataturk, and he thinks Ataturk is responsible for letting Turkey. How can I say? Is a nostalgic of what Turkey was before Ataturk during the Ottoman Empire. So its power, its influence, and that's what Erdogan wants back in Turkey. So everything Ataturk has done, he has to do more. So build bridges, tramways, trains, whatever, airport. Before you used to land in Istanbul in Ataturk Airport, not anymore. It has been closed, and now in the new airport in Istanbul, you have a portrait of Erdogan almost bigger than Ataturk's one. And Ataturk has founded the Republic of Turkey 100 years ago, sharp. And this year, that's why Erdogan wants this year, 2033. To be 23. The one, 23, to be the one of his re-election, because he's the one who has ruled Turkey more than Ataturk. So he wants to be the one who will stay in history forever, more than Ataturk.
We'll see if those elections in May will bring that. Claude Guibal, unfortunately, that's all we have time for. But thank you so much for your time.